Officer at the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, also known as IPEC. And I am joined today by two esteemed colleagues and friends. First, I have Sherri Gerek, who is Chief Academic Officer at IPEC and also one of my partners in crime. And we are joined and happy to be joined by a dear friend and colleague, Luke Davis, who serves as the Vice President for Coach Training at the International Coaching Federation, also known as ICF. And again, thank you for joining us. We are really excited to be here today. We are gathered here today to talk about this thing called a resource guide on diversity and inclusion for coach trainers and educators. And so the guide was released by the ICF in, I want to say early July, if that's right, Luke. And we have been chomping at the bit to sit down with the ICF and explore it. In fact, I would say some of us at IPEC have been lovingly bugging Luke about its release, some of us even going as far as to ask for sneak peeks along the way, and not some of us being me. So super excited, and given this level of excitement, I am not going to tarry, but jump right into the dialogue. And I do want to say this absolutely is a conversation, and it's probably not going to be the only conversation about this resource guide, because it is very rich and absolutely worthy of more time for deep dives. But, and I do want to, with saying that, say, Luke, you guys did an awesome job in creating this guide. And so with that, I'm going to jump right into it and just ask you, tell us what got us here today, what prompted the ICF to develop the guide in the first place?
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Dionne and Sherri. It's always a pleasure to join IPEC from the ICF and hear about great things that you're doing. And we're so glad that you're excited about the DEIJ resource guide that was released by ICF Coach Training. I mean, it was a labor of love for a lot of individuals involved. We went through, the ICF Board of Directors in 2020, really based on world events. I think whether we all want to admit it or not, 2020 really had an effect on a lot of us, both personally, professionally, just with colleagues and friends and people we knew in our life, that it really changed. And so ICF really took a look, and specifically within coach training, really took a look at things to sort of say, what resources are we giving coach trainers, coach educators, and even coaches in general around this DEIJ movement, which is not new, right? We've been having this movement for quite some time, whether it's civil rights or just injustices or any of those things. But 2020 changed us, and it really sort of exemplified the need to be a little more intentional about what we were doing and why we were doing it, and specifically within the coaching profession, what DEIJ means within that realm, what belonging added to that means within that realm. And so much appreciation for even acknowledging the guide on behalf of the ICF Coach Training Board of Directors, our advisory committee on DEIJ, and then the special committee on social justice education that worked really hard on this. Really in a moment to provide some resources so that individuals could do the deep individual work that's also needed of, yes, this is absolutely a collaborative process, but we really wanted to provide some deep and rich sort of resources so that people could actually do that work and could have a part in their own development of becoming more educated and more involved around DEIJ. So we're happy to be here today, and I'm happy to sit alongside both of you and chat about it.
I think, and Sherri absolutely chime in. What I loved about it, Luke, is that, all that time that we were bugging you, right, to say, what are you working on and when is it coming out? Didn't know exactly what to expect. And when we finally did see it, and I'm saying finally as if it was a long time, I don't mean it that way, but I guess it felt that way to me, right, because I was so anxious about it. But when it came out and I saw it was a resource guide specifically for coach trainers and educators, I was like, oh, okay. But then as I'm going through it, like, this is awesome. And it's absolutely valuable to any coach, right? Absolutely.
Right.
Certainly a coach training institution could take it and leverage this to help support their curriculum or what have you. But any individual coach that picks this up, no matter where they are in their D&I journey, can learn and help to do that personal work that you need to go through in order to effectively coach across difference, for sure.
Yeah, and that was really the intention. There was a lot of intentionality, and you're absolutely right. Long overdue to have this sort of work done within the coaching profession and things like that. I mean, this is the largest amount of DEIJ work that has come from the International Coaching Federation, and we're so proud of it because it really sets that tone of, we understand at ICF Coach Training that coach trainers and educators are out there around the globe every single day in our accredited programs, and they are leading these programs with individuals who are aspiring to become those professional coaches that we need so much in humanity, right? And what an opportunity it is to make sure that we are also having those tough conversations, both collectively as a group, but also individual with ourselves, of having those moments of reflection to sort of say, what's my own journey with DEIJ, and where is my own learning maybe even short-sighted, and maybe I need to create a learning plan for myself to do some of that individual work, because it is deeply individual. It's deeply individual to those around us. It's talking with friends and colleagues, and listen, I have the privilege of being a white man, and I understand the privilege that comes with. And when I talk to my colleagues and my friends who are of other genders, race, creed, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, it's different. And I think it's a learning journey for all of us. And we really just wanted to place some resources together to get people started on that learning journey, to start the conversation of what you want to become or you want to learn.
That's wonderful. And that's the piece that resonates so strongly for me as well, Luke. We did see, as our coaches were coming forward saying, gosh, give us more information. We really want to build our own individual knowledge base. How do we handle the kinds of topics that are coming forward that we feel compelled to want to share with our clients? And although we at IPEC have always identified as being a consciousness company, believing that the work that we help individuals do on their who they are and who they're being out there in the world, that's the most important work that we do. And that impacts everything that they do, how they are in the world, and so on. And at the same time, we didn't have enough in the way of resources that we could share for a strong knowledge base. This is a great bit of information that we're already putting into play with our trainers and our faculty team that have a standing appointment every month to review some of the resources in this guide, which creates a great, rich conversation and better prepares everyone to continue the conversation with clients, with students coming through our program, or in whatever capacity that lends itself.
Yeah, no, I think it's really great. I think, when we think about, even the new updated core competencies that were released, and we talk about the coaching mindset, that mindset is one of continued learning, continued development, to honoring the identity of the client, if they should bring that forward and in that space that we hold for them, and all of those things. And, something just what was coming up for me when you were talking about that was really, I think so many people look to DEIJ and they sort of say, let's just cover this in a one-time session and then that's it, right? Let's do a quick one training, and it's not. And so I love the idea of this continuous education and evolution of just every month you're having a conversation with them, and it could be around the same resource, it could be around a different resource. And based on the individuals, it's really based on the individual learning need of, what do we need more time to talk about? What do we need more time to discuss? Where do we need to dive deeper? What's making us uncomfortable, and why is it making us uncomfortable? And I think, that's where the growth happens. We say that all the time as professional trained coaches working with clients, right? It's the from to, and that gap is where all the learning happens. And I think sometimes we forget as coaches, we have a gap sometimes also. And we have to reflect on that and be in that coaching mindset to sort of say, what are the areas that we really can learn more about, and so that we can add that sort of rich experience and pass that along to our clients who work with us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what I like about that, Luke, is that even when you are, it doesn't matter what your niche is as a coach, right? And it doesn't even matter how much you may feel you already know about, diversity and inclusion. You've gotten that initial foundation where you know the definitions, right? And I'm an inclusive person, but at the same time, when you're sitting down one-on-one with your client, it's all about them and their identity. And that's something that you don't know, right? And so even if you are, let's say, an executive coach, you can be an amazing executive coach in a corporate environment, but you would want to, I shouldn't say you need to, but you would want to have a broad understanding of the different cultural nuances, even, if you will, that people experience, because that might come up in your work with your client, right? So if you have someone that comes and they want to talk about, I'm experiencing, you name it, an issue with speaking up at work and not talking about, things that are on my mind or what have you. We might want to lean in and say, you just have to be more assertive and explore that with them. But what if their background is one where some of us, it's, how would you put it? We're taught the squeaky wheel is the one that gets oiled, right? So we want to tell them, you have to speak up, because that's how you're going to get visibility. That's how you're going to get noticed. But for some people, culturally, they're taught the loudest duck is the one that gets shot, right? So, but if you don't know that might be a possibility, then that could be a blind spot for you, and you're not understanding why the work that you're doing with your client isn't necessarily landing the way that you expect it to. So having that cultural understanding of difference can only help you to be that better coach.
Oh, so true. I couldn't agree more here, because I think, there's so many different lenses at which you could look at this, right? And it's even, if you're an executive coach and you're even working with a female executive, a LGBT executive, their journey is going to be so much different than other executives who you may coach. And granted, yes, it is the client session, it is the client's agenda always. But if they bring that forward and say, I'm struggling in these areas, as a woman, as a gay man, as a trans person, if they are struggling in that area, what rich depth can be added by having done the work of actually understanding the diversity and the additional lens that the client has now put on that agenda within the session? How much richer the conversation will be able to be. I think you're absolutely right.
And those could be things that they haven't even really thought about fully themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Sure.
One of the things I love so much about this resource guide is that it is mapped to the core competencies. So it's really easy for us to see where these things come up as being core competencies. And the two of you talking just now bring up for me a conversation we've had previously, but we talked a little bit about the differences between what is brought up in a coaching session by the client and what is introduced by the coach. And so, it's really clear as far as what the coach's role is. And I just wonder if there's something that you can share around that with us, Luke, as far as the role of the coach in this regard.
Sure. Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, listen, I think that, the coaches that are watching today and coaches across the globe and will know, absolutely, it's always the client's agenda, right? We mm-hmm. always want to honor what the client is bringing to us within that space and the space that we're holding for them. And so, them bringing it up, we the purpose of this and the intention of this is not for a coach to go into a coaching session and sort of automatically be applying the DEI lens, right? It would be our agenda, and we would have a program in that. So it's not so much about that, but it is that, to me, it's the extra learning and work that can be done to richen and deepen and make more meaningful the connection and the space that you're having with the client, should a DEI lens be introduced by the client, right? And so even though, and what you were saying about the core competencies was really intentional that we did it that way, because, we wanted to show really clearly that issues of diversity, equality, equity, belonging, and justice are all intermingled, and they're multifaceted with the core competencies of coaching, with with ICF's definition of coaching. It's that partnering together, and so if that's introduced, if you've done that work, if you have had those uncomfortable learning moments with yourself on educating yourself about these topics, which can be heavy topics, how much more value the client will get from that session, and how much more value you'll get as the coach, being able to sort of say that, knowing where the learning is to be done, and knowing what your individual learning journey looks like. As coaches, part of that coaching mindset that I talked a little bit about before is really about that lifelong learning. We're evolving as a profession. And as we evolve, part of the coaching mindset, to me, is really about analyzing sort of what is our own individual learning journey, and where are the areas that we need some additional continuing education on, and things like that. That's why we renew credentials. That's why there's an education component to renewing credentials, because as things change, as things advance in the profession, and a relatively young one still at that, right? As we do that, there should always be that consideration, whether it's for DEIJ or whether it's for other areas within coaching that you want to get to. But yeah, I mean, it's the client's agenda and what they want to bring up. But to me, how powerful it can be, and speaking to coaches that where this has been introduced, how powerful it is when the coach is able to apply that lens, if the client brings it forward and gives permission for that to happen, to be able to just do a little bit more deep dive of the who, because we understand that DEIJ portion is a big portion of the who. It is who each individual is.
Yeah. And for the benefit of, the newer coaches that may be listening in, or those that are not coaches that may be listening in and viewing this recording here today, when we talk about bringing up a topic or the client introducing a topic, it can happen in a variety of ways. It may be that they come to a coaching session and say, I need more of a knowledge base here. I want some help to continue my understanding of DEI and how I can move forward in my life in a really powerful way with everyone I interact with. Or it could be that you have a client that's engaged you for some particular goals. And say, for example, they have some issues that are coming up, dynamics in the workplace. They want to strengthen communication and relationships there. And through the course of a coaching session, they let slip with something that is clearly a bias or something that comes up. And that is then introduced as an opportunity for the coach to invite the client to take a look at that. How might what you just shared be coming up within those relationships at work, where you've indicated that you need to broaden your lens? And so there's different ways that it can be introduced. And I think that's just valuable to share. It doesn't have to be an overt asking for a knowledge base.
Right, you're absolutely right. I mean, in a multitude of sessions, a client can bring forward lots of biases, even not even related to DEIJ, right? And so in those other cases, we're asking permission to, hey, may I point out an observation here that I'm sensing, or what's resonating with me from hearing you is this. And so I think with the DEIJ lens, it's the same situation. It's sort of say, may I share with you what I've just heard you say, or and to gain some clarification and to partner to really work on that observation and that bias together to see if the client's receptive. Obviously, still their agenda. And in a lot of cases, they may not be ready to explore that bias, right? And so that's the most important part, is that it remains their agenda. And if they're not ready to explore that, we as a coach don't push them to explore that, but we do challenge them and point out observations, because that is part of what we're doing.
Yeah. And a core competency,
right?
To be able to do that and even enroll them in, here's what I noticed. How does that land for you? Right? If they recognize it. Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful.
And with that, so we have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and this is a perfect time to actually answer some of them, because what we're talking about is how this can be of value to actual individual coaches. And so we have, even though it's set up as a resource guide for coach trainers, with that, we have folks asking, can we get access? How do we as individual coaches get access to this resource guide? So is this something that's going to be available? We can certainly put the link right in the chat and make it available to everyone that's here today. And those that are listening later, you could go refer back to the chat box. But if you are an individual coach and you're just perusing through the ICF website, is there going to be a way for them to be able to access this? Or is this really designed not only specifically for coach trainers, but is set aside solely for coach trainers?
Sure. So no, it is wide, and we want it distributed as far and wide as we can go. I mean, we even had city and state governments reach out to us after we published this and sort of say, hey, can we use this as resources in our training? The answer is yes. Whether you are an individual coach, whether you are an accredited provider or a non-accredited provider of ICF, we don't care. We want this to be for the benefit of DEIJ work in humanity and the work that needs to be done. It is already available on the website. So if you just go to coachingfederation.org, at the top, if you click About ICF, there's a link that says Diversity and Inclusion at ICF. And if you click on that link, you're able to download it there. You're able to see our specific stance on diversity and inclusion, as well as coach training specific stance on social justice there. So it is available. Please feel free to download it. And as you're going through the resource guide, I think it's really helpful when you think about this, is that this is not meant to be the one-stop shop of all the training, right? So this resource guide is not, if you work your way through the resource guide, you're a certified diversity coach, right? That is not what this is. It is really resources that can help you further and deepen your learning of DEIJ in a multitude of areas, as well as see how they directly relate to the ICF core competencies and coaching as we know it as a profession. And so it's really that piece that you take back, you have some individual reflection time with as well. You can view the resources. There's some film clips, there's some articles, it's tons of different media that's used and the links that are given there. And also, in addition to that, I'll just say, if anyone has any ideas of future updates to the guide, because we actually already are working on version 2, believe it or not, which we hope that will launch in early 2022 and be more of sort of, rather than a PDF document, a really interactive web page is what we currently have in mind. If you have resources you want to submit, there's a form on the ICF website where you can actually submit resources to us for the DEIJ. So if you've worked with something that you know is really powerful and has been powerful for you, for others, please submit those to us, because we really want it to become really a community document, a living document where people are sharing success stories, they're sharing challenges that they have with it, so that we're really able to really keep that and work to update it for the use of the community based on who you are. And it doesn't matter that if you're a coach trainer or coach educator, if you're a coach, if you're an aspiring coach, if you're a human being looking for diversity resources, this document can help you in a number of whatever seat you may sit in.
Yes. And some of those, the resources that I've reviewed so far are just, really valuable TED Talks that are 20 minutes of your time that will expand your consciousness in a huge way. We had discussions earlier this morning around a TED Talk, and everyone was like, wow, that just blew the doors off of so many things that really made me take a look at all of the other stories I've told myself. And this is amongst our faculty team, who's done a great deal of work personally developing themselves, And just a nod to the fact that our own development is ongoing forevermore. It's not a destination that we will arrive at anytime soon.
Right. Well, and the other thing with the guide is that, the guide was really meant to be complex and multifaceted and far reaching. So we're not only covering, social justice around race, creed, or origin, but we're also covering neurodiversity, the diversity of varying ability levels. Obviously, there's LGBT resources in there, but the whole spectrum of really what it means to be diverse is really included. There are resources available for a multitude of different situations, because I think also sometimes when individuals think about diversity, they think about it very singular, right? And so they're like, oh, well, that's a race thing, or that's a socioeconomic thing, or that's an LGBTQA plus thing. No, it's all of those things in one. And so I think there's one of the things that I'm really proud of is that it's so diverse in all of the different segmentations of what has been truly classified diversity. There's something in there for everyone based on what your individual learning needs are.
Yeah, wonderful. And there too, I find at IPEC, we have such alignment with the ICF that we're already planning out our DEI resource library. So we have plans, and Dionne's at the heart of what that is going to end up to be, but a living, breathing resource library that we will just continue to add to over the years to just provide all the information that we can, as you said, to help humanity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm really proud of the work, Sherri, that we've started doing as it relates to D&I, and how it intersects with coaching. So, Luke, we talked about this a little bit, and we get questions constantly, so what does IPEC do? And we've already started revamping our curriculum to integrate some foundational information about understanding what diversity, equity, and inclusion as concepts are, how they relate to coaching. And that's part of the overall curriculum for everyone that goes through our program going forward. And then, as Sherri mentioned, looking at how do we expand the resources that we have for our students and the broader community, that's a part of IPEC, to say, maybe you've gone through our training program already, or maybe you even have some level of knowledge in this space, but you want to make diversity coaching your niche, right? Do we have resources for that? Or you just want to learn a little bit more so that you can expand your consciousness and better serve your clients? So really thinking about how we can serve the needs of the IPEC community.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's and trust me that from ICF, we are very grateful for training and education programs such as yours to really take this on. And not only as, it's not a requirement, it's not a requirement for us, but we believe in it so passionately and wholeheartedly that, we really want it to be that pull rather than the push. I don't want to come out and sort of say, it's mandated for all accredited programs to have this. We love that programs like yours are stepping forward and stepping up and sort of say, we're in this with you. And we know that there's work to be done, both from a systemic level of the courses that we're offering, the curriculum that we're creating, but also the challenge to individuals that it's also a very individual and personalized journey of what happens when you leave the classroom? What happens when you graduate from IPEC? What happens when you become credentialed with ICF? The learning still continues.
Yeah.
Our mission is to raise the consciousness of the world. And this is just one other element of raising your consciousness. And that's not something that, to your point, Sherri, it's not a destination. It's just a continuous journey, continuously raising and expanding and knowing and growing. So really, really excited about that. Let me see if we have some more Q&A in here.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I've been a coach for 10 years, and I feel like I'm in the land of brand new possibilities. And just every day, it's like I'm a babe born brand new today. I learned so much. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question from Emily who's asking, how can people who have already gone through the IPEC training access these new resources and training around D&I that were just mentioned? And so what we're looking to do, Emily, we have, like I said, we've already incorporated, and Sherri, you can absolutely chime in on this too. We've incorporated it into the coach training program moving forward, and we'll be looking at how we can start offering it as a standalone for folks who have already gone through the program. So you'll begin to get more information about that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the first, I guess, roles that when Dionne came on board this spring, one of the very first things she did was took all of our content for all of our training modules, and she went through it all with the DEI lens. And we made updates and changes based on her recommendations there. The good news was they were not huge changes. Some were for very minor changes that were made, again, because our focus has always been on developing the who and working on a person's level of conscious awareness about their biases and the things that they are doing out there in the world, how they are being in the world. And so that has always been our focus. It required not an awful lot of change. What we look to do now is really enhance and expand on the knowledge base that we've been able to offer. So going forward, where we really see the opportunity here is, we're going to create, well, we're in the process of always creating at IPEC, but we're creating a conscious community where many of these things will live in a platform that we're just developing. And so that will be released later, early in 2022. At least that's some of the plan for it. But we'll have it in a couple of ways that anyone can gain access to. First, all of our coaches and alum, and then down the road, we'll have that available to the public in different offerings that come up. So the resource guide that Luke has been referencing is readily available now. Dionne has shared it here in the chat. We'll also make sure that it's readily available to our coach community, and anyone that wants to go out to the ICF website and pick it up right now could do that. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, Sherri, having spent some time with it, if you had someone in one of our coach training programs, for example, come to you and say, I don't have a lot of time, but I do want to, learn more in this space. What do you think would be the one thing, so if there's nothing else that you can look at in the resource guide, this is the one section I would tell you to spend some time with? And I didn't prep you on that question, so I apologize.
No, that's okay. And so the resource guide is here. And what I would say is choose your adventure. So one of the things I love about the way it was set up with the ICF is they've broken it down into subsets. Do you want to start with expanding your understanding around cultural identity? Do you want to get into diversity, to privilege, to microaggression? I mean, there are all of these different categories within which you will find relevant TED Talks, video clips, resources that you can read, many of which I've read that are literally a 5-minute read. So these are not going to take a lot of your time, but the information is so valuable, and you can get through it just one bit at a time, and then look at, how do I now reflect on that as it relates to me in my life? Because one of the, again, a core competency for coaching is each coach having their own reflective practice. Now I've learned something. How do I put that into practice in my own life? And how do I go out and live this in the world? So what I love about it, choose your own adventure.
Something for everyone, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and as Sherri said, it's really the journey, right? And the journey starts with 1 step, and then it's 2 step, and then it's 3 steps. So, it's a long journey to have. And so I think that's why sometimes people become overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, the language that we use is changing. Why can't we say this anymore? Why can't we say that anymore? Well, it's about educating yourself that 1 step at a time. And if you just start with that being simple about why what we thought was appropriate to say truly is not appropriate to say, start there. Start there and do that little bit of work at a time, if that's all the time that you have for it at this moment. That brings you to a whole level, another level of consciousness of actually understanding individuals who are different than you.
Right. And that our lives have impact.
Right.
And so how do we want to impact others? It's all about that awareness, and then being at choice, and how we go about things, and not just being on default and reacting as we go through the world. Yeah.
Luke, I know when we had talked in the past, you had mentioned part of the process in getting to this place, the ICF developed a task force, like a global task force on D&I. Can you talk to us a little bit about that task force? And okay, so this is the first, I guess, output, if you will, to come
Sure.
from them. What can we expect, or what is the plan for the global task force for ICF going forward?
Yeah, so there's a couple actually. Let me talk about in coach training in particular, and then I'll talk about global ICF, right? So as many of you all know, in 2020, International Coach Federation became the International Coaching Federation, which then introduced this global body as well as 6 distinct family organizations, which had sort of these particular areas. So what we've done in coach training, which is the family organization that really handles the accreditation of coach training and coach education programs globally. We have over 2,000 accredited programs globally that have met our standards, IPEC obviously being one of those. What really started this is the board of directors really said, we really want to create a special committee on social justice education to look at how does social justice and DEIJ work intertwine or go with what's currently happening in our accreditation processes, in the curriculum that my staff is reviewing on a daily basis. How does this work? Out of that came a really just amazing document that that you're now seeing has been really well put together, right, of the resource guide. In addition to that, we also appointed sort of and so when the work of that really sort of disseminated and stopped, we then actually appointed an advisory committee just to advise us on DEIJ issues, education within the context of coach training and education. And that's where this guide now is sitting with the updates of us working on version 2 and things like that. So that's really coming from that. Now that's just within the ICF coach training family organization. And there are other family organizations within ICF that are doing some really impactful diversity things overall. There is also a global task force, which is the overall International Coaching Federation. They did have a DEIJ task force as well. That task force work just recently concluded, and we're just starting to see the implementation planning of that. One of the really great things that has come from that, and that I can share with you here today, is that ICF Global will be hiring a senior director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that's an announcement. The job is actually live. With ICF, so you can actually apply. It's on the website and things like that. But we are taking some things from a global perspective. So even more so than creating the synergies of all the family organizations, and even what we've done within ICF coach training with producing this guide, is really looking at things from a global perspective of what does this mean for individual coaches? What does this mean with coaching in organizations? What does this mean with our social impact work that the foundation is doing? What does this mean about our thought leadership institute family organization, who's really think tanking the way that coaching will be in the future, and where we go with that. And also within our credentials and standards family organization, of really looking at what does DEIJ look like in that? What is the DEIJ audit of what are our current percentage of marginalized communities that are holding a credential in what geographic areas? And so there is much work to be done, and in lots of areas with us and with every other organization. But what I'm really excited about and what I'm proud of is that ICF has really been committed to that work. And we've really sort of said, we're going to put some resources here because we know that this is really, really important to just humanity in general.
And I'm excited because all I'm hearing is another partner and another person to add to my roster of partners in crime as it relates to D&I and coaching. So absolutely. No, we're excited. I mean, the search is underway for that person. And so we're really, really excited. If anyone has any ideas on that, we would welcome referrals for those who may want to have a really great impact in affecting diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice within the global profession of coaching. I can think of a couple of great people, but I'm also selfish, so another part.
Well, for any of those viewers who are out there today, though, that may know someone or that may be interested in self or maybe practicing and doing this work right now, right? feel free to reach out, and I can connect you with the right individuals and things like that. But we're excited about, I think what goes to be said is that I'm excited. ICF Global is very excited about where the future leads us with diversity, and understanding that we are committed to it. We are committed to doing the work, not only talking the talk, but actually really doing the work that's necessary, both group-wise, both individually, in where we go from here, and making sure that the identity within our clients and within ourselves are sort of respected and valued, and for all of those things that make us different.
It's exciting to hear how far-reaching this work is. And I know, last year we were hearing from a lot of our coaches saying, hey, hurry, let's get this going. And what's IPEC doing? And there's actually been an awful lot of work that's been happening behind the scenes. And I can hear that is the same that's been happening at the ICF. And so it's been on our part, and what I've heard you say in the past, look very intentional, the work that has been going on. So hats off to everybody. Yeah.
Well, I think it's just, it's the day that we live in is, I don't, people have to hold companies and organizations accountable, right? And I think it's really, really easy to talk the talk. And that's not what we want to do, because I think, we could put out this resource guide and let this be version 1 and not even think that there needs to be another version. What do we do next? How can we do this bigger and better? How can we disseminate this wider? What impacts does it have on anything else? We could have stopped at all of that. And I think, with what you're doing, with what we're doing, intentionality is the key, because I think it's really easy to put something really quick together and just put it out for mass production, and then not think about process improvement, or how do we change this, or how is it landing? Like I said earlier, what problems or issue people having with the guide that they want more of. We love to hear that, because we don't know how to change that unless, it's sort of like, it's like urban planning. Sometimes the sidewalks aren't built first because we wait to see where people walk, and then we build the sidewalks after there's a path determined, right? And it's sort of like that. We need to know how people are using this, how they're interacting with it, what's working, what's not working. And so, I think all of that being said, it's just, you have to be intentional to make this long lasting, to make this impactful. And that's what we've been really cognizant about doing at ICF, is that we want it to be intentional. We want to be able to walk the talk that we're saying. And I think that's most important.
Yeah. And that takes, to your point, that takes time. We got a lot of folks that were asking, looking for something right away. And if you want it to be sustainable, you have to be thoughtful about what you're doing. And that's why I love this work. We have a couple of questions. I want to get to those and then open up the floor for Q&A more broadly. One of the first questions we have in the Q&A box is, this is to you, Luke. On first glance, I'm not seeing neurodiversity in the definitions. If I'm missing it, where can I direct my attention? And what does the DEIJ work in this area look like for the future version?
Yeah, so neurodiversity, obviously, it is included in the guide, and it may not be included in these specific definitions, but there are resources throughout the guide on neurodiversity and varying ability levels. I'm happy if that person will reach out with me, I'm happy to explore that with them individually, but that is in the guide and is included, and we were really intentional because varying ability levels and neurodiversity is part of our DEIJ lens. It really, really is. Looking to the future, I think we still have a lot to learn about that, like the other areas. I think we have to explore what that looks like within the coaching context, within what the client may bring forward to us at any time. And also just being able to understand that we may be working with clients who may be neurodiverse. And what does that mean? And what is the impact for them? And what's the impact for coaching? So I think I even think there's some great research opportunities in a lot of these areas that we talk about in the guide, which obviously our academic research department will be looking at to sort of, look at the future, as well as sort of our Thought Leadership Institute family organization. That's really the think tank of sort of looking forward. But, it's not all complete. Like I've said all along, this is an evolving document. And so what I hope is that the more things that the resources that get shared and the resources that get created will be able to create more and more comprehensive editions of this every single year.
Well, I can tell you all of the information that's in this resource guide is going to be, like Sherri mentioned, incorporated into our library too. So it will absolutely get usage, because we're certainly going to have all of that in our library. So I have some more questions. Sherri, these two are for you. I'm going to start with this first one. What multicultural experiences does IPEC see itself creating in the future for students and graduates?
What I see that evolving into is really all of the things that we're going to be doing in our conscious community, again, which will first roll out for our coaches and grads, alum, and then beyond that will be something that we roll out to the public in general. And there'll be a lot of ways that you can work and play with us in that regard. We are going to be looking for partners there that have their own workshops and things that they want to share with the world. So if you have a specialization that you're looking to get out there in the world, we'd love to partner with you on that. We know that we're a very small, highly creative company, and we are always creating new content and new ways to engage and do our, carry out our mission, which is to raise the consciousness of the world. And in doing so, we know we are not the experts in all things. And we will reach out and use resources that are available to us to continue to expand and do all sorts of things. So it's not all going to be content and things that we create. Some of it is simply we'll offer up the platform and the way that we can go out and engage with one another.
And that's a great segue, Sherri, to the second question.
Okay.
Do you see DEIJ becoming one of the core dynamics niches, or a program course by itself, something that IPEC graduates might look to for continuing education? And in addition to the monthly webinars that we already mentioned.
Here too, I think one of the very first things that we worked on co-creating with one of our trainers who has a specialization in cultural diversity and experience in DEI, and it was something that you collaborated on as well, Dionne. One of the very first things we created was a DEI training for our coaches. We look at that being a 2-hour training event. We're really looking at, and that has some homework, if you will, in advance, so that all the coaches that attend can do a little bit of pre-work around bias, and then come to that training and develop from there. What we are also planning is an extension of that training that will be part of the continuing coach education training plan in conscious community when we get there. It's in development, but it will happen next year. And this will be an ongoing, expanding training that we'll do. I'm not really sure where this is going to end up, if it will be a core dynamics niche, if it will be some sort of a certification that we do, but we all have a lot of interest around doing that and seeing where we grow from there. So more to come on that as it evolves and we develop that for sure.
Yeah, I can absolutely say I've been looking at and getting a lot of questions from folks asking, what if I think I want to be a diversity coach? Is this something that I could go to IPEC for? And I've been looking at what programs are already out there. To your point, too, Sherri, absolutely open to, while we're developing things ourselves, looking to work with partners. So if there are folks who are already doing some of this work, is there a way for us to collaborate, linking some of the IPEC thought process and methodology with some of their subject matter expertise in the D&I space to come up with something that could work?
Yeah, and one of the things to keep in mind is we really certify expert generalists in coaching. And so we haven't established coaching niches that we then certify coaches in. We certify coaches that are experts in the coaching process, and they can then take that expertise to any niche that they choose. And by the way, when I became a coach and went through IPEC 10 years ago, I remember looking at the choices that were here are the 6 or 8 coaching niches you might choose as your own. And I was like, oh, feels a little limiting. And really, truly, those were sort of 8 umbrellas under which the niche that you can coach around and the specialization in the way that you choose to do coaching is only limited by your imagination. Mm-hmm. So whatever ideas we share with you in that regard, that's just a jumping off point. That is not the end of what you could possibly do. You know, my niche is felony offenders that are transitioning through drug treatment court. And the way that I work with them is mostly around emotional intelligence and, you know, increasing their personal presentation, how they want to be in the world. That was not one of the choices that I saw on that list 10 years ago. So we will give you ideas. We will partner with you to come up with all of your own. Beyond that, there are so many ways that you can do this work in the world.
So I'm going to open up now to Q&A and you guys can put your questions in the chat. I see a great one here that's getting a lot of traction, so I want to answer that. So Jose says, this sounds great and I appreciate your hard work on these very important topics. How is this going to translate to policy within IPEC and ICF, particularly with the poor? All right, I'm going to go ahead and read this whole thing because we can all see it anyway. For example, a few years ago, I looked into becoming a certified coach with IPEC and was shocked at the cost, it being about $12,000 US. And so when I asked the young, friendly white woman about financial scholarships or low income earner discount, I was surprised at her response because her reaction was, what do you mean by that? And it seemed as if I was speaking a foreign language. So I guess basically the question is, so how are we going to continue to walk the talk around making coaching more accessible and equitable, I guess, if you will. And so I want to take this as an opportunity to highlight a partnership that we've just established ourselves at IPEC. And I'm not sure, I believe ICF is aware of it because there are other institutions that are also beginning to enter into this partnership. There's an organization called Coaching for Everyone. Right now, they are a US-based organization. They have a two-pronged mission to first increase the access of coaching within the community of people of color. And the second part of their mission is to increase the representation of people of color that are certified coaches. And so to help to further that mission, IPEC has entered into a partnership where Coaching for Everyone fellows would be able to go through our program for free to them by way of the fellowship through Coaching for Everyone. And you can go to their website, it's coachingforeveryone.org. You're able to put in your application by way of their website, and you would be able to choose if you want to go through IPEC, and I believe they have a partnership with another coaching institution as well. But this is one way that we're looking to, one, help to increase the representation of people of color who are able to go through our program, or those that are disadvantaged economically to be able to go through our program, and also looking to support their first mission, which is increasing the access to coaching. We encourage our coaches to also offer pro bono coaching hours through Coaching for Everyone for those that may be in need and not able to afford it. So we're really, really excited about that. And we have our first class kicking off in November.
Yes. Yep.
And if I can just add something here, listen, Jose, I think this is a fantastic question. And I think I'm always concerned about accessibility globally, not just even with socioeconomic impacts, but with just geographic impacts and things like that. Something to come in 22 from ICF, and specifically a partnership between the ICF Foundation, ICF Coach Training, and ICF Professional Coaches, is that we do plan to launch really a beta test of coach training and coach education scholarships globally. We probably will be starting in underserved areas, Africa being one of the main subset populations of geographics of what we're targeting for accessibility reasons. And so there is an active conversation about that happening at Global ICF, and something that we are trying to keep the pulse of and develop programs and ways in which to increase that accessibility, because it is a real concern. So thank you so much for asking that question.
Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, Luke, I was so inspired during International Coaching Week. And when you saw on the ICF's website, all the different webinars, there was a lot of engagement in Africa and in other areas that we wouldn't normally think that there's so to see that it's growing, to me, I think is awesome. Yeah. Any more questions? Well, we have a few more minutes left.
I see a lot of people thanking us for the information, and it's been our pleasure, truly.
Okay. There's a question here from Alexandra asking if we can repeat the information on the monthly webinar. I think what we were talking about at that time was this isn't something that's public. It's more the academic team that's having monthly webinars during their team meetings to talk about different resources in the D&I resource guide. However, this is a great question because maybe that's something that we plan to do more publicly, whether it's, you know, on a different platform, to say, let's pick a resource like we're doing internally and let's have a conversation with the community around this particular resource. So Alejandra, thank you for putting that bug in the ear for sure. Let's see, any more questions? No, but let me see, what questions do I have for Sherri and Luke while we still have a few more left? I would say, since we only have we have 4 minutes left, I want to ask each of you your closing thoughts. If you had just one thing you wanted to highlight from today's conversation.
You know, what I would highlight is going back to what Luke shared in the very beginning. We will continue to find resources and information for you to increase your knowledge base. And it all comes down to each and every one of us doing the deep personal inner work to be able to move forward in humanity and do it in a way that's very empowering rather than disempowering. You know, we can change the narrative in this world, and we can do it collectively in a way that can heal a lot of what's happened in humanity since we've started tracking time together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, Sherri, it's really close to that. I think for me, it's, listen, we have to start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? It's that there are some heavy conversations to have. We need to have them. We need to listen. We need to show civility. We need to show understanding and show acknowledgement to our fellow human being who may be going through something that we will never experience in our lifetime. But it is, as a coach, and I would hope my fellow coaches would agree, that it's our responsibility to learn, and it's our responsibility to be able to acknowledge them for sharing that and holding that space for them, but also seeing that as a challenge for us to get more uncomfortable more often and learn about areas that we might have in the past immediately shoved off because they were too heavy or too divisive or any of those reasons that we can come up with.
Yeah.
There was a question that was raised in here, and I want to put this to you, Luke. Said, would ICF consider counting pro bono hours? And you may not have the answer to this question, so maybe it's putting a bug in your ear. Consider counting pro bono hours shared with Coaching for Everyone towards certification, or I guess that would be accreditation.
Yep. So, well, I'm thinking by certification they mean the credential level, right? And so there actually is pro bono coaching has actually been extended because of COVID-19 and the global pandemic. Of the ICF Credentials and Families Standards Organization is actually allowing more pro bono hours at this point than any other point in ICF's history. So we absolutely already honor pro bono coaching hours, and it's even elevated right now in the credentialing application process.
Yeah, that's awesome. One more question. Will there be a follow-up to this panel discussion to keep the conversation going with the ICF, especially on belonging? I like that question.
I'm happy to come as often as you would like. Absolutely. If you want me here, I'll be here.
We got that recorded, right, Dionne?
That's right. So, there's a great closing statement here, and I'm going to just read that because I think it's an awesome way to leave. Closing thought from Audra. Education and resources are great. Just be kind to everyone. You never know someone's journey. Empathy is okay. And all of these things are comprised of making a decision to embrace and be kind. It is difficult. Empathy is key. Empathy is everything. Yes. Yeah. As Sherri and I talk about leaning into our shared humanity. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We are at the top of the hour. This session has been recorded, so you'll be able to access it from our website. If you have any follow-up questions, absolutely shoot us an email at inclusion@ipeccoaching.com. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one because we just confirmed there will be more.
I'll be here.
Thanks so
everyone.
much, Luke. Thanks, Dionne.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Sherri.
everybody.